All right, joining us now on Texans Radio, it's Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, great to have you with us. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Good to be here, fellas.
Well, we're very happy this week, Nick. That was a tremendous victory. We know we have a lot to talk about with Cleveland on Christmas Eve at NRG Stadium, but let's reminisce, shall we, about that victory, which was all hands on deck and getting the job done.
Yeah, no question. Really credit to the players and the coaches. D'Amico talked about it really at the beginning of the week. This was going to be about everybody. We're going to need everybody. Not really sure where it was going to come from or who it was going to be, but if you're available, get yourself ready to play. And everybody had the right mindset and went in there against a good football team who has been playing well. We made enough plays on our end. They did a number of good things in the game that gave us the opportunity there in overtime or fourth quarter overtime, kind of the end of the game. I mean, it's interesting. We sit here every week, it seems like, but we've been in 9 one-score games and then 4 walk-offs. So 2 that we've won, 2 that we've lost. So it just goes to show you the margin of error is so slim in this league. But the players came through, a lot of credit to them, and the coaches did a great job, especially on the heels of what happened a week before in the Jets. But this is a really good example of you can't let one week affect the next week, and certainly emblematic of that, no question.
Nick, what was the key you thought for Case leading the offense to get them? And look, they didn't set records, put up 19 points going through overtime. It wasn't like the greatest offensive performance of all time, but it was maybe the right performance. What did you see from Case? What kind of got them in the right direction?
Yeah, efficient, ran the operation. Really, other than the interception, for the most part, there was a number of positive plays. One of the things that kind of goes unnoticed, especially a quarterback, sometimes in the running game, is getting the blockers distributed accordingly based on the defensive look. And there were a number of plays where he was able to either push it out or get the identification correct so we can get the blockers distributed properly. So I think those are some things that go unnoticed that not everybody would see or know, but made good decisions, made some timely throws. And he did a pretty good job of kind of maneuvering in the pocket and making some positive plays and keep some plays alive. And the 2 biggest plays in the game, really a touchdown pass to Noah and then the throw to Motor, were examples of just kind of movement, subtle movement in the pocket, keeping the play alive, and then something good was able to happen as a result.
And you had one of your best running performances of the year as well. What about what Motor did on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, hat on a hat. The offensive line did a great job. Tight ends were a big part of the running game. And it's tight ends, it's the receivers, and then the back making the right cut, making the right decision. But Motor's been very productive and consistent really from the beginning of the year. Motor's a good runner. He's very instinctive, has a good feel, has a good knack. He has good playing strength for his size, has good balance. He has good vision, so those are good qualities that you want a running back to possess. So we were able to churn out some positive yards, and we talked before the game about the running game, and then even the red zone. So we were 1-3 in a red zone, but that one, I would say, touchdown made a difference. And then conversely, defensively, we did a great job, I would say, in some of the situational areas that enabled us to put ourselves in a position to have a chance to win at the end.
Nick, there were a number of players out. I know you know this, but Dalton Schultz came back. Having Dalton back in the offense, he has 4 catches. He obviously has the one over McCrary. But it just feels like there's something with Dalton being on the field. Like, he's going to be in the right spot. He's going to be where you need him. He can be that third down completion. There's a big third down completion to him on the sideline when he's flexed out that we needed after the interception. What are your thoughts about Dalton being back and how much that helped?
Yeah, Dalton's a smart, instinctive football player, has good hands, has a good sense of space. And he's been, over the course of his career, I mean, he's basically been a 55, 60 reception player. So, I mean, there's production that goes along with it. And we were going to see, pretty good tight end this week. We'll talk about Njoku in a little bit. But, I mean, Dalton's experience and just his sense and savvy of how to play football certainly adds value to the offense.
Nick, I love stories like Desmond King, like Derek Barnett, guys who weren't with you. They come in, they play huge roles in a terrific defensive performance like that. What about that part of it as well? The way these guys just fit into what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Dez's case, certainly his familiarity with the system, having been here the previous 2 years. We made a decision in training camp to just look with something different, and then there was an opportunity to bring him back. But, I mean, Dez, a little bit different, but like Dalton, very instinctive football player, has a good sense of how to play, and he's a good run force player. And when you're in not a lot of nickel defense, whoever that 7th defender is, in this case the nickel, is a huge part of the run force. So he had a number of tackles at or near the line of scrimmage, and that speaks to his toughness, that speaks to his tackling. And then Derek's been a good player in this league for a number of years. Hasn't, I would say, over the last however many weeks, wasn't getting as many opportunities in Philadelphia, which led to his release. But he's very strong. He's powerful. He's an instinctive player. He's experienced, even though he's only 27, 28 years old, but he's played a lot of football. And he took advantage of his opportunity. I mean, he's not Will Anderson, but, he was able to give us a lot of good snaps, and we're going to play 8, 9 players. So, I mean, really, the whole defensive line, I mean, every single one of them had a play where you can go back in the game and say, boy, they made a difference and impacted the game.
Speaking of defensive line, waiver claim on Monday, Tuesday, whatever it was, Tier Tart. What can you tell us about that, Nick?
Yeah, interesting story. Undrafted player, kind of found his niche, made a way, and I would say he was a steadily improving player for Tennessee. I would say from 21 to 22, you saw a big jump in his play, and then 22 to 23, he played a significant amount of snaps here, and we were preparing for him. Then they released him here. It was just a decision that they made, but has good size, has good playing strength, has a certain level of toughness, probably a little bit better run player than a pass player. But, it was an opportunity for us to add a player that, has been a decent player here. So we'll see how he fits relative to what we do, and maybe he can give us some plays there on a defensive line moving forward.
Well, and it just goes to show you, and in relation to what we were just talking about, it's such a week-to-week thing, this whole thing. Last week's team looked nothing like a team that played 4 weeks before for you, almost, right?
Very much so, Mark. And we've talked about this on the show. This season is really 4 quarters. So you kind of have the first quarter, you kind of have the middle. We're kind of entering basically the fourth quarter here now. So your team kind of evolves. It's going to change. You're going to have some players that are on the roster that are come off because of injury, or there's going to be some personnel changes or adjustments. So I think maintaining that flexibility and adaptability is important. And then just looking at where are we right now, present time, what do we need to do this week? What's our opportunity to either add a player or make an adjustment? So that's kind of where we are, and we're going through the same process here this week in preparation for Cleveland.
Along those lines, though, do you remember a time where we've seen so many reserve quarterbacks playing key roles in a playoff chase down the stretch here?
It's probably been a while, Mark. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head, probably just from a sheer volume standpoint. I mean, even last night watching the Monday night game, I mean, Drew hadn't played very much at all, and Drew took advantage of his opportunity, but I mean, we'll talk about Cleveland, but what they've done has really been incredible, and what Joe's done is a credit to him and the coaching staff. But it just goes to show you, at some point, you're going to need everybody on your team. So you can't discount, well, this player is a backup, this player is the third this. At some point, that player may have an opportunity, may have to play. So you have to, as a staff, feel comfortable with that player. And if there's a chance to upgrade that position or player, then that's part of our responsibility. But I mean, this is a very unique year. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. I mean, I don't want to say it's half the league, but it has to be at least half the league has played with multiple quarterbacks. I think there's been 5 or 6 teams that have the same starting quarterback from week 1, but the rest of the league has had to deal with some level of attrition.
I mean, Sunday could be Joe Flacco versus Case Keenum. And who would have had that, I mean, on your bingo card at some point? But to your point earlier, Nick, we talked about everybody in the D-line had done something positive. But then you bring in Tier Tart, and I always think about this draft-wise. Like sometimes they're like, well, why'd you draft that position? You're like, well, it was strength and a strength. And I would say the D-line has been, for the most part, a strength this year. But bringing in Tart is kind of exactly what you're saying, that is strengthening a strength.
I would agree with that assessment, John. I think sometimes there's a propensity to think, well, you don't have X, you need to get X, and that's where you should allocate your resources. Okay, well, or look at it as, well, we feel we're pretty good here. Well, here's another opportunity to maybe enhance that, because at some point, if you lose 1 or 2 of those other players, then this person can maybe step in. So I think from our perspective, D'Amico and I have talked about this extensively. It's just about getting good football players consistently with the right makeup, with the right mindset. And then once we get them here, we'll figure it out, and we'll try to make it a good problem, not you're responding out of need or necessity because you don't have that optionality.
Well, Nick, it's such a week-to-week thing, like we said, and I only bring this up because I cannot resist using a financial metaphor here, because all the fans are talking to us about playoff positioning and stuff like that, and this is like trying to cash your 401k early, right? You look at it, it is where it is, but it doesn't matter.
Aren't there penalties for that?
Yeah,
when you cash
exactly.
in your 401k?
And you can't do it till you get to the end of the line, right?
It doesn't really matter. So once you get through the regular season, there'll be a point in time where you see where you are as a team, but until you get to the end, the only focus is on the opponent and the task in front of us, which I would say this week is very formidable.
And let's get to that. It's the Cleveland Browns. We're 1-0 against the state of Ohio this year, beating the Bengals. Got to go to 2-0 against the state of Ohio. which one of us in this
You had to bring it up
yeah,
that
had
way.
to bring it up that way.
Yeah.
We got to be better than the state of Ohio. But the Browns, 9-5, really good football team, and like us, knows how to win games at the end. What's the scouting report on the Browns, Nick?
Yeah, I think what they've done is really as good as any team in the league. It starts with Andrew Berry and the way that they've constructed the team and the roster.
Yep.
A lot of respect for AB. And then Coach Stefanski has done a phenomenal job. I mean, they've lost as many players as just about anybody in the league. But, I mean, really good coaching staff, very experienced. I mean, Kevin, really more of an offensive-minded coach. They bring in Jim Schwartz to be the defensive coordinator. And, now they're leading the league in defense.
Yep.
So Jim is a very experienced coach, very smart coach. They're very good in the kicking game. Bubba Ventrone is a player. I mean, funny story. I actually worked Bubba out coming out in the draft when he was coming out of Villanova. So it was in April. It was just the two of us on campus. He was actually coming off of like a broken fibula or broken leg. He wasn't fully healthy.
Oh, wow.
But Bubba is really very tough, and he's a very good coach. So really good coaching staff. I mean, Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. So good coaching staff. And then they have, I would say, some elite players. I mean, defensively, Miles is just one of the best players in the football players in the league. Forget about defensive player of the year. He's one of the best football players. I don't want to say like a unicorn, but I mean, he's a unicorn. But very good front, very disruptive front. Garrett, Smith, they signed Tomlinson for agency. I'd say JOK is really improved kind of first, second, going into his third year. Very explosive, very fast. And the secondary, I mean, they have basically three starters at corner in Newsome, and Denzel, and Emerson. They've had some attrition there, a little bit at safety. But, I mean, they're first in the league in basically every defensive category, so certainly present challenges there. And then offensively, they've kind of been able to make do with what they have. The one thing, the couple players that have been consistent, Njoku and Coop, have been kind of, really the whole receiving core for the most part have been out there and available. Njoku is one of the better tight ends in the league, and where he kind of separates himself is his run after catch, his ability with the ball. He's very athletic, very strong. Coop still has a lot of big playability. And then quarterback-wise, Joe's done a really good job here over the last 3 games and come in. Joe can still throw the football. I mean, he's got a really good arm, very experienced. He's assimilated to Kevin's scheme. And they've gotten really good production from Ford at running back with the loss of Chubb. So they've kind of figured out a way to make it work, present a lot of problems offensively and defensively. They present significant problems. And I would say from a core kicking game, just personnel, probably as good a player at the core positions as any team in the league. They use JOK, who's their best linebacker, good punter, and Corey Bajorquez, and then Dustin Hopkins done a good job. So I would say top to bottom, from AB down to the way they put the roster together, the coaching staff to the players. I mean, there's a reason they're 9-5, and a lot of credit to what they've done.
Interesting. Nick, you grew up in that part of the country. So take us back to young Nick Caserio going to games at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. The mistake on the lake, some people called it, but that had a beauty to it, that stadium. An authentically old, classic stadium, right?
Yeah, old school stadium. I mean, Browns played there. The Indians played there. So there was a little football, baseball. And now you have specialization. It's just, okay, you have a football stadium, then you have a baseball stadium. But definitely had an old school vibe to it. And in the winters, it gets a little bit cold right there on the lake. But that was part of growing up in Northeast Ohio.
That franchise, Jim Brown, people forget about how great Otto Graham was. I know this is well before your time, but you've heard all the stories in the household.
No, you're talking about, I would say, some of the people that have impacted the game of football as significantly as anybody else. I mean, everybody talks about Jim as a football player, but what Jim did after his career left his mark and the imprint that he had, I would say, from a societal standpoint, probably going to be unmatched. So when you just look at the history of the organization and the people that have been through there, there's a lot of it's a very storied franchise. And I'd say, under the Haslam ownership and what Kevin and AB have done, they certainly put it on pretty good footing here moving forward.
Nick, as you were talking about, kind of the history, you were talking about the history of the Browns. I wanted to make a Joe Flacco age joke, but when you watch Joe throw the football, you're like, he's 38? Really? How's he doing it? What's been the biggest thing that's worked for him these last few weeks stepping in? I mean, He was interviewing for a TV commentator job on Inside the NFL, didn't get it, and now he's leading the Browns and throwing it really well. What's been big for him?
Yeah, Joe's played a lot of football. I mean, and Joe's been a very successful player for a number of years. I mean, what he did in Baltimore, I think is pretty well documented. And then he, with the Jets and kind of at the back end of his career, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. But there aren't too many things that Joe hasn't seen. So I think anytime you go into a new situation, it's just understanding, okay, what's the expectation? What do I need to know? Sometimes when you come in during the season, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's more of a week-to-week understanding the core of the game plan. Or you're going to get some of the base foundation, the fundamentals, but it's not as if you have the entire playbook that you have to have a full understanding of. So Joe's always been able to throw the football. I'd say Joe kind of has a sneaky way of moving around the pocket. He's really more of a pocket passer, but they still run some keepers and run some boots to kind of get him on the edge, and he kind of has a feel for how to navigate in the pocket. And he's been very accurate with the ball. I mean, there's been a number of throws where he's really put into tight spots. So Joe's always been a very accomplished thrower of the football. Kind of has a moxie and a way about him, and he's able to see the field because of his size. So, I mean, credit to him and, Coach Van Pelt and, Coach Stefanski for what they've been able to do with Joe in a short period of time.
Couple more, Nick. Here we are coming to the end of the year. There's a draft board somewhere in this stadium, right? So you have it up there. And how much is that going to change in the next few weeks based on not necessarily bowl performance, but I know declarations are obviously going to be huge and things like that as you get toward the combine?
Yeah, no, we have, it's funny, we were looking at this a week or two ago. We probably have, 250 to 300 sort of players sort of on the board, if you will. That includes underclassmen who we think may declare, but they may not declare. So then once we get the official deadline, then those names will come off. And then our first kind of round of meetings in December was more of a needs-based need to know. What do we need to know about this player? What do we need to find out between now and let's call it April? So that's kind of where we are. So a lot of this is going back and just if there's any players you haven't seen or watched, getting caught up on those players. And then we'll have the All-Star game kind of circuit here coming up here in January. So we'll spend some time there. And then February we'll come back and kind of circle back. And then we'll be able to go through pretty definitively the underclassmen, who's declared, where are we on that player. So it's a little bit of a moving target, but we do have a population of names, no question about it. So then it's a matter of, okay, does the over the top in the West see the players that are in the East? So we want to try to get as many people at the top to see as many players as possible. So then we have those discussions and dialogue. You're getting input from everybody. So definitely a moving target, but, we have a pretty good foundation in place. Our guys, the group has done a phenomenal job to this point. So try to stay on track here and just get information. A lot of this is information gathering and just try to make sure we stay ahead of it here over the next few months.
Nick, along those lines, and this maybe just is your opinion, how is the transfer portal and NIL changing the draft in a sense that maybe there are some guys like Dylan Gabriel, okay, he's going to the draft. Well, no, he transferred to Oregon, and you're like, okay, well, that's one less quarterback in the draft. And maybe it's too early to tell, but it just feels like, to me, just kind of watching outsider looking in, that there are more guys transferring than maybe declaring.
Absolutely, John. I would say that whole process, it's not to say significantly altered, but it's definitely made an impact. It's interesting. The league right now, they're getting evaluations of potential players that may declare underclassmen, but some of those players are also in the portal. So they're in the portal. They're trying to get, well, where am I projected? Okay, well, the league is telling me this. All right, well, maybe the better option is to go back to school. Right. So you didn't really have to think about that before. And you've seen the number of underclassmen that have declared decline over the last 2 to 3 years. I think it peaked 140, 150 or whatever it was. Say last year was around 100-ish. But I was reading something the other day. There's 1,200 players in the portal right now. So it's essentially college free agency, which it puts a lot of tax and stress on the schools, on the players. But it's, okay, play one. I mean, the kid from the Ivy League Player of the Year, the Penn kid, defensive tackle. Played 4 years, probably was going to end up, on a roster, be with a team. Well, he transfers to Florida. So now he has an opportunity to play up. So I think you're seeing a little bit of that. Graduate, see if I can play up versus, well, I'm going to go in the draft and maybe I improve my stock if I play up a little bit. So there's a lot of factors. All we can, it's kind of like what Marc talked about, all we can control is what we can control.
Yep.
So we can't sort of make it up. So we're prepared for as much as possible. But then once we know, okay, here's the pool of players that we're dealing with, then we can allocate our time and resources and then try to identify the players that we think are the best fits for us.
Money aside, and if it couldn't be the NFL and you had to coach, would it be D3, D2, D1 with all this portal stuff? And I imagine D3 is no picnic either with all the recruiting that goes on at that level.
It's a great question. I mean, I'll speak from my experience. I've kind of done a little bit of everything. So having played at Division III, coached at Division II, had coaching experience in the MAC, and having a good fortune to work in the NFL. They're all different, but by the same token, it's still football. So I think you just want to try to find the best situation that works for you individually. Just try to be around as many good people as possible and just go out there and just try to do your job at the best of your ability. So that would be my answer on that one.
All right, finally, I don't know if you noticed, but it's Christmas week, Nick. And
This just in.
you know what your nickname is at home. But can you share some maybe from your youth, holiday traditions that stand out, or a special gift or something like that just pops out, big Christmas memory from the Caserio household?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I grew up, it was just, we had a small household, myself, my brother, my mom and dad. So Christmas Eve, we would always go to my Nani and Papa's, my mom's mom and dad. So that was kind of our tradition. So we'd go Christmas Eve, we'd do our Christmas exchange there, and it was really just our family. I mean, we have a very close-knit, very tight family. Very small kind of group, very intimate though. And then Christmas Day, we would do it at our house, and we kind of have Christmas morning, we'd open presents, and then we'd end up going to church. So what we've tried to do with our family is try to carry the same traditions. I mean, it's just in Texas, we just have our family. It's my wife and our girls and our dog. So we try to create a similar situation as we had growing up. The hardest part about the holidays is just, when you're away from your family. But, we have a great time. We have a great day. Our girls understand, the importance of Christmas, not just opening gifts, but they go to bed early. We do some things the night before, and then they come down, and they're hopefully they see a bunch of presents down by the tree. But
Very nice.
it's a great holiday, and we're definitely looking forward to next week.
All right, well, Merry Christmas. Good luck, Nick.
Merry Christmas. Thanks.